The land of Israel groaned under a sky of brass. For more than 3 years, not a single drop of rain had fallen. The rivers had shrunk into dusty scars. The fertile fields had become cracked wastelands, and even the great wells of the northern kingdom echoed with emptiness. The people wandered with hollow eyes, wondering what had gone wrong. Livestock collapsed on dry ground. Mothers held crying children as famine tightened its grip with merciless hands. But the drought was no accident, it was the judgment of God. At the center of the crisis stood one man, a prophet wrapped in a rugged mantle, a man whose prayers had shut the heavens themselves, Elijah the Tishbite. And now, after 3 long years in hiding, Elijah had returned, not to bring rain yet, but to confront the most dangerous throne in Israel's history, and to prove once and for all who was truly God. This is the story of a mountain, a challenge, a divided nation, and a fire that fell from the sky. This is episode 2 on the story of Elijah. The fire on Mount Carmel. The palace of Samaria was restless. King Ahab paced his throne room, his royal robes dragging behind him like shadows. His face, once proud and smooth, had grown gaunt. The drought had changed him. He had sent messengers to every kingdom, north, south, east, west, searching for a single man. Not for an enemy general, not for a foreign king, but for a prophet, for Elijah. Beside him, Queen Jezebel sat with cold confidence. She was not like the Israelite queens of old. Her eyes burned with Sidonian fire, and her influence wrapped around Ahab like a serpent. Ahab slammed his fist against a pillar. "Where is he? Where is Elijah?" Jezebel narrowed her eyes. "Why do you tremble before one man? Your problem, Ahab, is not Elijah. It is your weakness." But Ahab knew better. The drought had begun the very day Elijah declared it, and Ahab feared the man who could speak, and heaven obeyed. Outside the palace gates, the people murmured. They were not like Jezebel. They remembered the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But Jezebel had flooded the land with prophets of Baal and Asherah, 850 in all. Feeding them at her own table, Israel was torn between 2 beliefs, 2 gods, 2 destinies. And Ahab knew only one man could end the drought. So when news reached him that Elijah had been sighted, the king set out immediately. The sun hung white and merciless in the sky as Ahab traveled with a small escort, searching for grass for his remaining horses. Beside him was Obadiah, the governor of the household, a righteous man who secretly feared the Lord. It was he who had hidden 100 prophets of God in caves, supplying them with bread and water. While Jezebel tried to wipe out the worship of Yahweh completely, they divided the land between them. Ahab rode toward one region, Obadiah rode toward another. Dust rose beneath Obadiah's sandals as he walked down a barren path. He was thirsty, tired, and fearful. Fearful not of Ahab, but of the spiritual war tearing Israel apart. Then a figure appeared on the path ahead, a rough cloak, sunburned face, determined eyes. Obadiah froze. There was only one man in Israel who dressed like that. He fell on his face. "Is it you, my lord Elijah?" Elijah nodded calmly. "It is I. Go tell your master, Elijah is here." Obadiah staggered back. "Have I sinned that you are giving me into the hand of Ahab to be killed? He has searched every kingdom for you. If I say you are here, and the Spirit of the Lord carries you away, Ahab will kill me." Elijah stepped closer, his voice steady as stone. "As the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, I will surely present myself to Ahab today." Obadiah breathed with relief and hurried away. The time had come. The confrontation was inevitable, and all of Israel would be drawn into the decision. Ahab rode fast when he heard the news. His horse kicked dust across the barren ground. Then he saw him, the man he had searched for years, the cause of his misery, or so he believed. He pulled the reins sharply and pointed. "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" Elijah did not flinch. He walked toward the king until only a few steps separated them. "I have not troubled Israel," he said calmly, "but you have, and your father's house, for you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord and followed Baal." Ahab stiffened, but Elijah continued like a consuming fire. Now gather to me all Israel at Mount Carmel. Bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." He paused. "Let the people choose today whom they will serve." Ahab swallowed. Behind Elijah's eyes burned a purpose he could not challenge. The order was given. Israel would come. The prophets of Baal would come. And the mountain that stood between heaven and earth would become the stage of the greatest spiritual contest the kingdom had ever seen. The mountain rose high above the plains, a ridge of rugged cliffs covered in ancient forests and windswept stones. By morning, thousands of Israelites were climbing its slopes: families, elders, soldiers, priests, farmers, shepherds, people desperate for rain, people desperate for answers. At the summit, the atmosphere crackled with tension. To the left, a massive assembly of Baal's prophets stood in bright red garments, 450 of them, shouting, chanting, waving ceremonial staffs. Their presence was loud and intimidating. To the right, the prophets of Asherah, adorned in blue robes, waited proudly. In the center stood one man, Elijah. No entourage, no attendants, no robe of honor, just a weathered mantle and a mission from God. When the crowd quieted, Elijah lifted his voice. "How long will you falter between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." The people looked at each other, but answered nothing. Their silence was the confession of a nation divided. Elijah raised his hand and pointed at the prophets of Baal. "Choose one bull for yourselves and prepare it first, for you are many. Call upon the name of your God, but put no fire under it." Then he motioned to his own lone altar. "I will prepare the other bull and call upon the name of the Lord, the God who answers by fire. He is God." A murmur swept across the crowd. A challenge, a test, a moment of truth. And Baal's prophets accepted it with furious eagerness. The prophets dragged their sacrifice onto their altar, an elaborate structure decorated with carved images. They cut the bull, arranged the wood, and lifted their hands toward the heavens. The morning sun blazed overhead as hundreds of voices shouted, "O Baal, hear us!" The noise echoed off Mount Carmel like thunder. They danced. They leapt. They twirled around the altar in frenzied circles. "Baal, answer us! Baal, send the fire! Baal, hear your prophets!" Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. Still, nothing. Elijah stood with folded arms, watching. The people shifted uncomfortably. By noon, the prophets were sweating, breathless, exhausted. But desperate, Elijah stepped forward with sharp sarcasm. "Cry louder, for he is a god, is he not? Maybe he is meditating, or busy, or on a journey. Perhaps he is asleep and must be awakened." The crowd gasped. The prophets grew furious. They shouted louder, slashing themselves with knives and lances until blood flowed down their bodies. Their screams filled the air, but the heavens remained silent. No fire, no voice, no response. The spectacle dragged past noon into late afternoon. At last, Elijah raised his hand. "That is enough." The prophets collapsed in exhaustion, defeated. Now the moment had come for God to show Israel who truly ruled the sky. Elijah stepped forward toward an ancient ruined altar, a place once dedicated to the worship of Yahweh, but broken by years of neglect. He knelt down and began to rebuild it, stone by stone. 12 stones, one for each tribe of Israel, one for each promise God had made. The people watched in reverent silence. When the altar was finished, Elijah dug a trench around it, deep and wide. He placed the wood in order, laid the sacrifice upon it, and then turned to the people. "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood." Water? In a drought? But they obeyed. The water soaked through the sacrifice and dripped into the trench. "Do it again," Elijah said. They did. "Do it a 3rd time." By the end, the altar was drenched. The trench overflowed with water. There was no earthly possibility of hidden fire, no trick, no deceit. Only a miracle could ignite that altar. Elijah walked slowly to the front, lifted his eyes toward heaven, and prayed, not with shouts, not with theatrics, but with quiet authority. Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back to you again. A holy stillness fell on the mountain. Every eye looked upward. And then it happened. A roar echoed across the sky. Deep, powerful, terrifying. A streak of blazing light tore through the heavens. Like a sword of pure fire, it struck the altar. Whoosh! A column of fire exploded upward, brighter than the sun, hotter than molten metal. The ground shook. The people screamed and fell on their faces. The flames consumed everything. The sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the water in the trench, even the dust. It was not normal fire. It was the fire of God, divine fire, heaven's fire. The crowd fell prostrate. The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God. Their voices rolled like waves across the mountain. Baal was defeated. The lie was shattered. The truth was undeniable. Elijah stood tall, like a fierce wind sweeping across the summit. Seize the prophets of Baal. Let not one of them escape. Israelite soldiers surged forward. The false prophets fled, their red garments flashing between the rocks. But the people overtook them. They were brought to the brook Kishon, where justice was carried out, a dark but necessary cleansing of the nation. Baal worship had cost Israel its identity, its morality, its heart, and God was reclaiming His people. The sky remained clear, but Elijah was already looking toward the horizon. He said to Ahab, who was still shaken, "Go up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of abundance of rain." Ahab obeyed, retreating to his chariot. Elijah climbed higher up the mountain with his servant and knelt, head between his knees, in deep, fervent prayer. "Go up now," Elijah said. "Look toward the sea." The servant ran, looked, and returned. "There is nothing," Elijah nodded. "Go again." 6 times the servant repeated the trip. 6 times the answer was the same. Nothing. Still nothing. But Elijah did not stop praying. On the 7th time, the servant ran back with eyes wide. A cloud, a small cloud rising out of the sea, like a man's hand. Elijah stood immediately. "Go tell Ahab, prepare your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." The wind began to howl, clouds gathered like armies marching from the west. Thunder rumbled, and then the heavens tore open. Rain poured down in torrents, the first drops Israel had seen in years. As Ahab raced toward Jezreel, the power of the Lord came upon Elijah. He pulled his mantle around him, ran down the mountain, and outran Ahab's chariot. Through the storm, God had vindicated His prophet. God had reclaimed His nation, and the drought was over. Mount Carmel became a turning point, not just for a nation, but for every generation that would hear the story. It is a reminder that, when the world is confused, God still speaks. When truth is challenged, God still answers. When hearts wander, God still calls His people back, and sometimes He answers with fire. Watch out for the next episode, The Whisper in the Wilderness. Before you go, I believe you were blessed by the message. Please leave a comment at the comment section about what you gained and what part struck you the most. Just so you know, this is Bible Stories by Daniel. Please do well to subscribe for more edifying and powerful stories, and also tell us which stories you are anticipating in the Bible. Thank you, and God bless you.